What's up guys, JayzTwoCents here, and I'm gonna wring every single ounce of content out of Vega that I possibly can because, you know, we talked a lot about gaming performance. A lot of people focused on gaming, but I'm one of the ones who said it's more than just gaming with this card, it's all about compute performance. And there's a lot of different ways you can leverage that, especially in CAD drawings, live CAD renderings, stuff like that. But what about video encoding? I've talked about it being a great card for video encoders and content creators alike. So I figured what we do today is we would just go ahead and compare Vega 56 and 64 versus the GTX 1070 and 1080 and see which is actually doing a better job for content creators.
Do you want to be cooler? Do you want to be more desirable? Well, you're in luck because right now you can own your very own JayzTwoCents swag and immediately be the cool kid on the block. Max out your sex appeal by following the link down below.
Now this is an interesting matchup because on paper, pricing wise, these are pretty equally matched, right? 1070 versus 56, they're roughly the same price, $399. And then you've got the GTX 1080, which is matched on paper versus the Vega 64. And yeah, I took the water block off to make this fair. And as you can see, they're all reference coolers, so that's important. But we live in the real world, where the problem is Vega 64 right now is actually being priced competitively against the GTX 1080 Ti, which we know this absolutely dominates this in games. But what about in a professional environment? So in order to try and appease both the MSRP, which we're hoping the graphics cards will actually come back down to, so I'm comparing them 56 versus 1070, 64 versus 1080, and then 64 versus 1080 Ti to basically account for the way things are right now at the time of making this video. And in the future, let's just hope that's a completely irrelevant test. But even on paper, it shows that the Vega 64 should be beating the GTX 1080 Ti in a more professional environment when you look at the raw single precision teraflop numbers. So I wanna see if that actually plays out. So with that said, let's talk about the way we're gonna do the test. I'm using an Adobe Premiere test project, it's the Bald Eagle test, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a baseline because I've got my i9 7900X on water with 32 gigabytes of Dominator Platinum, 3200 megahertz memory, DDR4 of course, and then the CPU is overclocked to 4.6 gigs. So I'm gonna do a baseline test to see how it does with no OpenCL and no CUDA to see how we're gonna be doing without a graphics card. Then we'll run the same test, compare the logs with each graphics card, no overclocks or anything, just setting them to their turbo clock and letting GPU Boost 3.0 do its thing on NVIDIA side, and then we are going to see what the results are. So with that said, enough talking, and let's do it. So we did quite a bit. Okay, we did a lot of testing on this, and I'll be honest, we had some results we weren't expecting. We added some extra tests that I'll show you in a minute because we were trying to figure out some of these results. Now the perspective of this video, the perspective of this video is suffering succotash. I actually spit, I saw it fly. Didn't hit you. So we did our baseline test with just the CPU, and it was about 5 minutes and 26 seconds. You guys saw the graphs. And then we put on the Vega 56 and used OpenCL, and we saw it come down to exactly half of that, about 2 minutes and 13 seconds, which was pretty impressive. So we put on the Vega 64 expecting to see it to come down even more because we know there's more stream processors, more compute performance on the 64, and it was pretty much the same. And we weren't really expecting that. We thought, wow, that's interesting. Okay, what happens when we put on the GTX 1070? Exact same results. I mean, 1 second difference. Put on the GTX 1080 and it was slightly slower than the 1070 even, but again, within a second. So then I thought to myself, this is very strange. 1080 Ti, same result once again. So what we found here was all the graphics cards were pretty much the exact same result within 1 second. So I really started thinking about this and I went, okay, what's the big picture here? So I decided to end up taking my GTX 1050, which was something I didn't even mention at the beginning of this video because we added it later, and guess what? Exact same result. Now I decided to go to probably the slowest card I have here, which is kind of sad to mention actually. I wish I had some older cards, but I don't. My GTX 660. And again, the same result. 2 minutes and 13 seconds. So that got us thinking here, what's happening? We are seeing that obviously with a high-end CPU like this, 20 threads, overclocked, lots of RAM, that we were seeing pretty much exactly half of the CPU performance when it comes to rendering time when you add a GPU. Any GPU. It didn't matter if it was a high-end Vega card, a high-end NVIDIA card, or something that you can get for around $100. It didn't really seem to matter. So what we did was we ended up going into the BIOS then and disabling hyperthreading, turning this chip effectively into a 10-core, 10-thread CPU. Now we ended up trying to do actually 4 cores, 8 threads, turning into a very high-end 7700K with a lot of cache. For some reason the BIOS wasn't letting us do it. We would disable, but then Windows still saw it. So once we disabled the hyperthreading, we did another baseline run and we got 7 minutes and 47 seconds of encode time with just the CPU, 10 threads, no hyperthreading. But once we hooked up a GPU, any GPU, the 660 versus the 1080 Ti, we got 3 minutes and 35 seconds with the 660 and 3 minutes and 34 seconds with the 1080 Ti. So once again, that showed us that although the whole thing slid kind of as a whole bracket longer with less cores available to it to the CPU, adding a GPU made a significant difference in render time, but it didn't matter what GPU we used. So that was something that was a little bit unexpected. Now, I tell you this part right here. That's obviously not the whole story when it comes to CUDA versus OpenCL, right? I mean, we're talking OpenCL here. This is not a specific AMD technology. It's an open source technology. But you know, the amount of teraflops and compute performance really doesn't seem to make a difference when it comes to Vega versus CUDA on video rendering, where it seems like the most important thing is that you have the most powerful CPU you can get, and then any GPU whatsoever hooked up to it, okay? So yeah, that's our results, and it wasn't what we expected. I had expected Vega to win. I really did. Now, unless you're gonna be doing extremely high-end pro workflows with things like real-time AutoCAD rendering and 3D modeling, which I don't actually have a way to test that, and maybe I'll try to do that in the future, I don't think you're gonna see the benefit of Vega, whether it be for games or content creators, which is really disappointing. Until the price comes back down, it's not something that really makes a whole lot of sense at its current price point. And unless the guys that are doing cryptocurrency mining, and I'm hearing rumors that they're actually cracking this card using OpenCL and doing some amazing stuff when it comes to hash, but no one will actually talk about how they're doing it, I have no idea. I have no idea who's buying up these cards. So anyway, if you guys think that we should do future testing on GPUs for performance and professional workflows, and let me know what suites you guys think we should do. I'm not actually all that sure because I'm not sure the best way to compare it apples to apples. But if you're a content creator looking to create videos and you want to get the least amount of render time, then it obviously doesn't matter which GPU you go with. It's still all about CPU. Anyway, guys, with that said, I'm gonna go. Tell me what you guys thought about today's video. These results were highly unexpected, but they were fun to test, which is why we ended up throwing more graphics cards at it because we were trying to find some rhyme or reason for it. But whatever, guys, time to go. Thanks for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.